Hey, Kaushik, it's Eric Jang from Rutgers University. How are you today?
Hey Eric, good. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. Where in the world am I calling you today?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm just gonna. There's handful of people in the waiting room, so we'll just keep letting them in.
Sounds great.
A minute or two to get settled in. Eric, let me know when you want me to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'll do is maybe give it one more minute. I think I can jump in, handle a few administrative announcements, and then would love to kick off there.
Sounds good.
Kaushik, was there a password by any chance for this Zoom room? I have one person messaging me who they're not able to get in. It might just be their own personal connection, so it might not even be us, but I just wanted to see if that was the case.
I don't think I had a password on this one.
Okay. All right. It might just be them then. So let me just message them real quick.
On the call, I had a password. I did not. I don't think. I'll double check my Zoom. I don't think there was. Did anyone else have to put a password in? I think so. Yeah.
I just got in.
Okay.
Got it. So that might sound like a one-off case. So I will just message them onto the side. They should be able to join. I think it's probably just connection. So they're signing on from a different device there. But I think I can kick it off here. Without further ado, hope everybody has been having a good week so far. We know it is midterm season right now at Rutgers. So we really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day and from your studies to come out and speak with Kaushik. last year, we hosted one of our first events as a collaborative event between us, LIBOR, as well as him and his platform. And we had a really good connection there, and both the conversations that we had on not only being able to get a great internship or a great full-time job, but really looking long-term in terms of, I think, a best way to position yourself. And I definitely say Kaushik is a very, very big supporter of Rutgers students across all levels. And we really do appreciate your time today and want to say that. And I would say that, this is definitely one of the more friendly events. Definitely feel free to speak up, ask any questions, plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So we would like to make this as interactive as possible. Of course, maybe during the presentation, trying to save it for here and there, but definitely plenty of time to ask questions. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Kaushik. Please take away.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on. And thanks for the team for putting this together. I do remember being on campus, I think it was last fall. It was sort of, it was a great event on campus. I think we had like a bunch of people show up, and it was just really good to sort of start our relationship with Rutgers at then. I'm obviously very close to your, people that were on the leadership side last year, and now Eric and team. So as Eric mentioned, sort of look forward to continue the partnership from the Elevate side as well as my own. I'll give you sort of my background very quickly, and then we'll make it interactive as much as possible. There's a few topics I do want to cover with you guys as it relates to careers, career success, finance, how to sort of think about it. And so we'll try to get through those. But feel free to stop me and sort of ask any questions. I will say this, there's a bunch of stuff I do as part of Elevate as far as upcoming events and stuff. So I've just shared with you guys a Google Docs. So feel free to put your email or check out the links. I know a bunch of you guys had added me on LinkedIn before. Sorry if I've not gotten to it, but I've included a few links. You guys can feel free to use as you see fit, but I'll go through some of those in a second as well. So let me get through our presentation. Let me know if you guys can't see the presentation when I sort of share it. All right, so let me start off with, for you guys, my background. I've spent the last 8 years within different areas of finance and investment banking and private equity. Post MBA when I went to Chicago, I started at Goldman Sachs as an associate. There I got the chance to sort of be the lead associate on some of the biggest transactions in the financial services space. And I'll give you guys a little bit of background. Maybe I will in a second around why sort of that journey happened. I didn't start out in finance. In fact, pre-MBA, it's funny, I moved to this country as an immigrant. I was probably in middle school, I think, when I moved here. Didn't have no connections to the world of finance. Frankly, wasn't even a business major until sophomore, junior year of college. And I went to a non-target school. I went to the University of Maryland, which is my state school where I grew up. And then looking back, I kind of worked really hard my entire school year, junior year, senior year to get an internship. This is back in 08, 09. And it was at a fixed income sales and trading desk at BNP Paribas. So I kind of had my internship lined up and everything. And then obviously post mortgage crisis, like that whole thing fell through. My offer fell through, and everything fell through, and I was pretty bummed out. This is my senior year. And so I started my career in consulting. And I think one of the reasons I say that is sort of, I think we all have different career paths, and then we often think like A, then B, then C, and it doesn't actually always turn out that way. And so I went back to sort of get my MBA in business school at Chicago, and then pretty early on, I got my MBA 2 years after my undergrad, and then I joined Goldman. We're very, very fortunate back then. Also, I joined there, and I can give you guys more of the background around that as well. As an associate, obviously, I got a chance to work on some of the deals I talked about. I led the $100 billion divestiture of GE Capital, which is one of the largest deals ever in FIG, like I mentioned. I also was a lead of the Synchrony IPO, which is about a $3 billion deal, and then subsequently split it off into a $20 billion M&A transaction, and a bunch of other stuff. So lots of deal experience, both in banking and on buy side. After a few years in banking, I had a really good experience at Goldman, and then I started looking at the buy side. I talked to a few firms, et cetera, and I had an opportunity come up at Goldman's own private equity group, which is about a $100 billion fund. And then they made me principal there. So it was great opportunity to do private equity. And then I did that for a little bit. And then I joined another fund, Bardet, as a director to help them build out sort of the global private equity business. And as I look back sort of in my 20s as a way to I didn't start out in finance, but I was able to kind of position in a way where to still have sort of an accelerated career. So I'm happy to talk through some of that. And then at GS, I served in a bunch of leadership roles, like I was chief of staff in banking. I led our analyst committees and associate recruiting committees, promotion committees, summer offer committees, all that. So happy to share with you guys some of the experiences from on the recruiting side. And then I started Elevate last year as a way, it's sort of what I'm building here. What we're building is sort of the premier recruiting, networking, training platform. I'd like to think. And the way we do that is we partner with professionals in the industry. So we partner with, top firms and professionals across private equity, banking, VC, hedge funds, even management consulting. I was just recently featured by McKinsey. So kind of in that area, even though that's not particularly my huge expertise. And then we're also partnered with groups like yourself across kind of the top 30, 40 groups, both on the undergraduate side and the MBA side. To give you a perspective, I can share with you some of these links, but these are some of the folks that we've had on our platform in recently. So, okay, no, just 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so very fortunate to have on sort of some of the, a lot of professionals from the industry. Eric's familiar with the platform. Some of you guys are, so feel free to check it out. I think we have kind of all these different speakers on. And then on the university side, we're partnered, like I mentioned, with sort of the top clubs like yourself across the country, both on the undergrad and the graduate side. And so we sort of do a lot of initiatives with all of them, like, speaker series and things like that. And one thing I'll point you to over this fall, we're having on speakers from a lot of funds. Like this Saturday, I'm having on an associate from Centerbridge Private Equity who was at Goldman before. Next week, we're having on a senior associate from Goldman Sachs as to do sort of fireside chats. To the extent that you guys are interested, I allow students, if they submit questions, there are a lot of students that attend. So some of them, like, we can ask the audience or ask the speaker. So it's just a great way to network, especially in this sort of COVID area with a lot of these firms and professionals. And also learn, right? I think that's the other thing is firms are not doing as much on-campus stuff and things like that. So it's like a good way to get a culture for firms, whether it's on the private equity side or banking side, et cetera. I mentioned this, which mentioned to Eric earlier. We also created sort of the first ever and the only training, which I wanted to make accessible training. I think I've had over 50 students from Rutgers in the last year take this training, Eric. So I think it's sort of been sort of a great lesson learned from them. Basically bring together sort of this masterclass type model, but for careers, right? So can we make accessible training on these different careers? It's fully taught by professionals in the space. So I think, again, to give you high quality access to information and professionals there. So feel free to check that out. And then, so that's an overview of Elevate. And we're also doing some stuff on the recruiting side. I think you could find all that on the website. I would probably say before we jump into the topics that you can fill out the spreadsheet that I just linked to. If you guys have any, if you want to sign up for the upcoming events or the newsletter, which I think now goes to like 5,000 or so students across the country, just, totally open to all our partner universities. Let me pause there, and then maybe I will jump to sort of finding the right field for you. Maybe before we start, Eric, it would be helpful for me to get a sense from the audience. If people are able to put on their camera, that would be awesome, just so we can see each other. But if not, maybe just get a sense from the audience on like how many people are like underclassmen, upperclassmen. I think Rithvik mentioned like a 60-40 split. I mean, actually, I think Eric, you mentioned that. But maybe just give a sense for me of some of the things that are top of mind for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the mix there is probably consistent. Again, if anyone's comfortable putting on camera, again, this is a pretty casual environment here, so no need to go suit and tie. But I think
I'm not in a capacity or anything like that, right? I just want to be helpful. Obviously, I'm doing, but yeah, thanks, Eric. Okay, so look, I think no pressure. Let's maybe start with sort of I think this fall. I think I mentioned to Eric this, but I probably have done 20 of these presentations to various size groups across all my partner universities. So I've kind of seen a lot of questions that come about, whether it's COVID, whether it's recruiting, et cetera. And so, sort of happy to help answer some of those questions. But anyway, let's maybe jump started. If no one sort of has anything to kick off, let's start with sort of finding the right career in finance for you. I like to start with this area because I think, I think a lot of folks have different notions of different careers, and they probably see other people doing it, or have heard about it but aren't really quite familiar with all of them. So let's just I'll lay them out. Then on the right, I have a tab on Elevate Speakers. Those are basically, if you want to learn more about these careers, these are speakers on the Elevate platform that you guys can go and listen to and learn much more about these careers, right? So these are our partners on the firm side. But investment banking, right? A lot of my folks within Elevate, I'd say, across my like 30, 40 universities, I'd say about 60 to 70% of the people want to go into investment banking. And so the crux of this job is client advisory and execution, right? So as sort of the nature of the job is clients or firms or boards or companies hire us as bankers to provide them with strategic advice on a whole host of transactions, right? Capital raising, M&A, whatever the case might be. So I think, so that's sort of the crux of M&A. As a junior person there, you're really building a deep financial skill set. You're building up, financial analysis, modeling, all that stuff. And you do get to work on complex deals and projects, right? So I talked about my IPOs I worked on, the sell sides, buy sides, all that stuff. You get to do that and get a really good foundation in finance and in business. And as you progress in these careers, there's just like a more expectation that you develop more relationships on execution and more on the strategy side. So I'd say that's sort of some things to highlight on the investment banking side. There's several cons to this if you think about it. One might be that you don't get as much operational experience. One might be that the work style is pretty intensive. So that's one maybe con to this space. But anyway, it's just something I think a lot of people consider just as a really challenging place to start their career. The second area is private investing. I think this sort of can be private equity or private credit. This is effectively, rather than an advisor, which you do in investment banking, here you are sort of thinking about it as an owner, right? So as a private equity investor, I would look at companies of saying, all right, do I want to own this company for the next 3 to 5 years? Because ultimately we're raising money and we want to accumulate a set of good companies in that portfolio that beat the market, right? So I think for us, that part becomes really important. So I think that's on the private side, and you can see this both on the equity and the credit side. The key thing here is whereas in banking, you're sort of looking at advisory across the whole industry, in private equity or private credit, you're really deep diving into a handful of industries or companies per year and really going much, much, much deeper in terms of diligence. So that's just one thing to note. You're also now an owner. So not only are you looking at the diligence side as an owner, you're also going to be running the company for 5 to 6 years, right? So 3 to 5 years. So I think that becomes really important. And then you really have a focus both on the operational side as well as the financial side. So the transaction thing, the execution, as well as sort of portfolio company management. Venture capital, I'm talking to VC managing partner tomorrow from this company called Foundation Capital, which invested in Netflix, and I'm having them on our venture capital training. And I think this is an area, as I've prepped for that session, I think it's just a fascinating, obviously it's growing like crazy, and it spans like anything lower, sort of a little bit lower down the cycle than private equity. So any earlier stage, non-majority investment or minority investment would be sort of categorized as venture capital. And obviously there's much more of a technology focused. A lot of my undergrads don't go into this. A lot of my MBAs go into VC, but obviously it's just an area to think about. Public investing, hedge funds, I know a lot of space, people are interested in that. This is just public markets, right? So crux of the job is investing, but also you're trying to find an edge, when information is all public. So if you like, that type of space, I think this is an interesting area to figure out. And finally, consulting, strategy, corporate. I have a lot of students who are interested in consulting. Obviously, it's much more of a strategy operations focus, and it may be less of a finance sort of heavy nature, right? So that's sort of my summary. Again, like I mentioned, if you guys are at all interested in more about these careers, like on the Elevate platform, we've had on professionals, or we partner with professionals at all of the firms on the right. So you should go back and listen to some of these like totally free conversations that they've had about their career success and what they do on the job. I think it's like a really great way to learn and start your career search. So let me pause there and see if folks have any questions on those topics.
I can please go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I was wondering. So my current skill set doesn't really align to a lot of the different businesses that you've mentioned. So I was wondering, how would you recommend somebody looking to pivot into these businesses to acquire the experience necessary to get into this?
Yeah, and what is your skill set like? You're an undergrad, presumably?
Yeah, I'm a current senior, and I've previously worked in more corporate finance roles.
Okay, I mean, like corporate finance, and have you lined up sort of a full-time role yet, or are you still kind of in the market for it?
I'm still looking for opportunities right now.
Okay, got it. So look, I think I would say I would say like uh, just sort of figure out sort of this, I would sort of figure out kind of what about the corporate finance space, and in corporate finance it could be anything from like FP&A to to like M&A, et cetera. And if this is a career that you're interested in, I think it starts with probably three things, right? One is sort of relationship building. So you kind of going out there and meeting people in this industry and figuring out sort of where the opportunities are. Number two is sort of skill set building. So like what have you done in the past that that sort of gives you the skill set to be successful either on the job or the internship. And then the third thing is experience building, which you already have in terms of previous internships, right? So yours is a little bit about figuring out which of these, if any, are interesting to you, or you're just sort of interested in corporate finance and why. And then number two, like answering the question or help answer to firms that might be hiring, why your corporate finance experience could make you in a good position to sort of succeed in this, or what you're genuinely interested in X, Y, and Z. Because you guys are early on in your career, like, look, my first job was in consulting, which has nothing to do with banking or private equity. So, kind of take that with a grain of salt. But you just sort of have to, I think I challenge all you guys to find the best job that you can coming out of undergrad, or even before then, whenever this journey starts, and use that to tell you more about what you're good at and sort of where you want to take your career, right? So yes, there's distinctive advantages to starting out in like a banking or consulting careers, but a lot of people that start in banking consulting don't end up staying in the industry for a long time. So I would kind of say it's equally as important to start somewhere like that as much as it is to find those things. So, but I think more tactically for you, Alan, I would just like break down into what are the industries that you're interested in, what are, where would you be well positioned, because there's an element of like where you're interested in, and then there's an element of reality of like where firms might find you interesting, and then I would just try to find the bridge between those two things, such that you can find that career that's more realistic, but also be the best job you can get out. I'd probably also more tactically start out with firms that recruit on campus as a place to start, but like quickly expand beyond that. If you are truly interested in some of these finance careers, you have now 8 months to sort of bridge the gap, right? So find and talk to as many people as you can in these careers that you're interested in, be it M&A, be it, whatever they are, investing, and then try to just figure out how you're going to get your foot in the door. Whether it's going to be right away, is it going to be do a school year internship? Is it going to be doing something else and then doing that? I think that's the clearest path that you can get. And it sort of all starts with firms willing to give you a shot to do that. And then the second part of it is really working on your story, like the why. Like the minute you get people on the phone or even in your outreach emails, you got to have a pretty strong why, as in, hey, I've done corporate finance, I'm really interested in investing, or I'm really interested in M&A for this X, Y, and Z reasons. This is why I think I'd be a good fit for this. And I'd love to have a conversation about this, right? So I think it's as much about establishing your story and your credibility at the beginning of these conversations, right? Is that helpful, Alan?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Excellent. You got it. What else? I think there was a couple more. Was it Ruchir? Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Was what you said also like applicable to like private equity? Because like everything I saw was just pretty much saying how the only way to get there like reasonably was like exit ops after like some experience in IB or like
Yeah,
a really like
and,
niche
and can you tell me a little bit more about yourself? Like what year are you? What have you done? What are you interested in? And why? And maybe why you're interested in private equity?
Yeah, I'm a sophomore majoring in finance and bait. As for like real like application stuff, I haven't really had like any experience there, but I like did dabble in like some SQL, some like Bloomberg marketing concepts. So I'm kind of
Okay,
like interested in.
and then why are you interested in private equity?
Um, I just want to be like more like involved in like the business process, and I think like the best way to do that would be like structuring like like private equity deals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, I think, look, I think certainly, certainly there one path into, if you're interested in something like private equity, is going via an M&A or banking route. There's other paths. I had on someone from Warburg who on the Elevate platform who went in there to consulting, right? So they went there through working at a consulting firm. So there's
Hello,
definitely
everyone. We currently just have one.
Cool. So there's like certainly like different pathways into these type of careers. So I think for yourself, I would say first, just get a really strong, like, almost drown out the noise around you of like people thinking, they're going into X, Y, and Z or whatever. I've had people, like I mentioned to you, I see people across 30, 40 different universities, who all are, are either going to banking, private equity, or, consulting, or some of these related careers. But frankly, some of them are going there without banking. Some of them are going there right out of undergrad, right? So I think it's sort of like, how do you position yourself to do that? Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's like a necessary, yes, there's the banking route is much more of a kind of a proven path, but anything can happen. But more importantly, I think is for yourself, one is to get up to speed on what these careers are and what these industries are all about. Obviously use all the resources that we have on the Elevate stuff. There's just so much stuff out there from real world professionals at these top firms. So I think that's the best place to learn about some of this stuff. So sort of build that knowledge. And then I think then start thinking about for yourself, like, do you think you'd be a good investor? Like, let's start proving that out, right? Like create a book or create sort of an investing ideas, themes and things like if that is something of interest and sort of test it out. You've got 2 years to sort of test it out. And so one is kind of the first understanding level of what are these jobs. Number 2 is like, are you going to be good at these? So assessing your own strengths and weaknesses. And then number 3, get out there. Like you're not going to get necessarily get a PE internship like the first thing out of your sophomore year or junior year. But I think, just get some sets of experiences that lead you along the path of helping you get a better understanding of these careers, right? I get a lot of questions like, hey, I want to go work at this firm. But then, it may not be the first job you can get. It has to sort of, let's say you got an internship somewhere else and then you get something else and then sort of lead into that. And then so yeah, understanding of the job, understanding of yourself and strengths and weaknesses. Number 3, getting actual experiences. And then number 4, just start building relationships. I think I will probably say this 50 times on this call, and I'm truly believing that. I've talked to, I think there's some familiar faces here like Rithvik and Eric, and I'm sure from last year, I think I beat this into the ground, but a lot of reasons why, sort of my own career success and also the success of Elevate has been because of the relationships I've been able to build over my career, right? I think so. Just being able to bring on speakers of like all these different, calibers onto the platform, is just sort of, I think, a testament to the relationship aspect. But I think you got to start somewhere, right? So that's the last part, sort of building those relationships. So I know Richard, seems a little bit like, it seems like a nebulous answer, but it actually is sort of building all those things such that it's not overnight, but maybe 3 to 5 months from now, or 2 to 3 months from now, you have a better sense of these careers. You have 5 or 6 relationships and people you can talk to. You go through the resources that are available, and then you sort of have a much better understanding of not just how you're going to get into private equity, but also like, why and why you think you'd be good at it. And then how do you actually go in and tactically do that, right? So that would be my suggestion for someone in your shoes who's sort of a sophomore, still trying to figure out different careers and so on and so forth. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, of course. I think a couple people pinged me about, oh yeah, I mean, you could ping me about the, not that one, the upcoming events. So I'm just gonna, so this is the one on Saturday that we have. I think we're almost at capacity, but if you guys want to fill in, I'm sure if people don't show up, John, hey, for us.
So I'm currently a sophomore, and I'm majoring in finance, and I'm thinking about minoring in data sciences. And kind of like you, I moved to the United States in middle school, and I don't really know anyone. Like I don't really have a big network of people who work in finance, especially like front office. So I've been taking it upon myself by networking and everything. But I would say that my biggest challenge is leveraging my connections. I'm sorry, leveraging my connections and making them kind of, like developing that impression virtually and have them kind of refer me when I need it.
Okay.
So,
and you are, and I understand. Thank you for sharing that. Are you a sophomore? What year are you?
I'm a sophomore.
Okay, sophomore. Look,
and I'm on the Newark campus.
Okay, that's fine. So I think, look, one great thing about Rutgers is it's a big school, right? With the business school and whatever, I kind of always say this about sort of non-target schools. I went to school at University of Maryland. Obviously, even like, I think when I joined Goldman, I was probably like one of 2 people from my undergrad in all of the firm of 10,000 people that were there from there. So I'm just going to give you an example. And I came from, I'm not saying like, a lot of things went right my way. So I'm just sort of saying, learn from my experience, not like, it's not necessarily going to, I'm not saying do the same thing, but, for me, quite honestly, what I think helped me sort of putting one step in front of the other, like, in other words, like, there's no one in my family that was in finance. Like I came from a family of engineers. And I think sort of, I just realized, and I was an engineer when I started college. So I almost like, I don't want to say burned, but I sort of burned a year and a half doing engineering before I realized I wanted to kind of transition into finance and I had to sort of buckle up. So I didn't have an internship, my junior year, sophomore year, and I finally got an internship. The way I overcame some of these things is sort of try to be a little more creative. I knew, and a couple of things, right? One is I did not see myself in competitiveness against competition against like people around me. I was sort of on my own journey, right? Because I think that's one thing I think I see a lot of people do. They say, oh, there's only like X amount of positions. And if I get it, this other person doesn't or whatever. I think you just got to say, all right, what is the right thing for me? And I think if perhaps my approach there, I think helped because I was like, look, I'm not going to do all these things that these other people are doing that frankly, I'm not good at or are not going to help me out in my way. So I'm not going to sit here and do all these other things that other people are doing. I'm going to find out for myself what works and what doesn't, whether it's networking or experience building or whatever, and then do that. I also realized I was willing to sort of bust my ass and get work experience. So I signed up for like a school year internship. So I applied for I reached out to like cold emailed a bunch of firms in the area, in the DC area. And then there were sort of the financy type firms. And I was like, hey, like if you guys need 20 hours a week, 10 hours a week, I will drive down and work for you guys. So for me, I was like, I don't have a summer experience. So I'm willing to bridge that gap. And I got lucky, right? And I got lucky. I also like, so I think, and then, yeah, I had zero connections. I think I would say even less than you guys. So what I wish I'd done more of, go through the alumni database at Maryland or, whatever, and go through the MBA people and the undergrad people and just reach out to people and connect with them on something. Like you sound like a great guy. I sound like someone people want to help out. Right. So I think just kind of bring to the forefront sort of what you're trying to get out of this. And sort of, you're not wasting people's time, but maybe be more focused, right? Say, hey, I'm really interested in healthcare. I'm giving an example. I'm just really interested in the healthcare space because I've noticed X, Y, and Z things are happening in the market. This is my background. This is the stuff I'm interested in. I notice you work in the healthcare space. I would love to just get 10 minutes and kind of hear what your career experience has been. Also like, what your journey has been. So just sort of, or we said, look, I come from a target finance background. I noticed you were at Rutgers and you went on to do this. That's super inspirational for me. I'd love to get sort of 10 minutes and hear about that journey and whatever. So I think just connecting with them and try different things that work or they don't. And I'm curious to hear how long you've been sort of on this networking path and what's the success rate has been and why or why not.
So I started networking over the summer. I'm in the student managed fund, and like one of my mentors kind of like, told me that if I really want to get into, investment banking or anything, I really need to start networking. Yeah. So for me, networking virtually is like normal just because that's when I started. But I've emailed hundreds of people. I've gotten on, I would say like at least 50 calls.
Okay.
Some have been really good, but out of those 50, I would say maybe 10 are meaningful. And out of those 10, I would say like I got like 3 to 4 referrals out of it. So I understand that it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
But I'll try, like my biggest focus right now is to, increase that margin of referrals and like meaningful calls.
Yeah, I mean, be very, look, the numbers you're saying are not like, they're actually pretty good. 50 calls is actually pretty good. You know what I mean? Like if you think about how long you've been doing it and that you're a sophomore, couple things I'll say, keep very organized, right? I think as much as you can take notes at these meetings and see what they say, like, and then such that you have areas of follow-up, right? Let's say you talk about something 6 months later, recruiting is kicking back up. You say, hey, like we talked about X, Y, and Z. I've been doing this other thing that we talked about, it would be great to kind of compare notes. I'll send you what I'm working on, et cetera. I think just keeping very organized is going to be really helpful. Following up with people if you don't get responses, another thing I felt was really helpful. And yeah, so things like that. And okay. And look at the conversion stuff. You just have to give them a reason to sort of help you out, right? I think whether it's sort of like, hey, and it doesn't have to be I don't know what your pitch is, but I think between you and me, I think this is fine, but it doesn't have to be like, hey, I don't know anyone in the industry or whatever. I think it should just be like, look, I'm early. I'm very undeterred, right? This is my goal. Like I am trying to break into whatever industry my junior year, and that's my goal. And so I don't, whatever I need to get there. Particularly, I'm interested in your firm and X, Y, and Z. So I'd love to sort of stay in touch and I'm very hardworking, blah, blah, whatever you want to say, but sort of make it like give them a reason to, because you get your intro based on the Rutgers connection or whatever you have. But beyond that, people are going to have to be like, okay, is this person good person, like a qualified candidate? What are their strengths? What do they bring to the table? Do I want to work with them, et cetera? So once you get them on the phone, those are the check boxes you got to start ticking off, right? Is this sort of someone I would hire to work with, not someone I have a call with? So that's the question that people are answering in that call, right? When you get the informational, people are saying, is this someone I'd hire? It's like an interview. So be prepared, kind of do all the things you're supposed to, but also like, ask good questions and sort of ask them about their deals, dig in, listen. Like I'll give you my whole thing around, informational meetings and how they're successful, but really critically assess for yourself, like, if you have a bad meeting, what went wrong? If you have like a good meeting, what went right? And so you can replicate those things. I think that can also be helpful, because let's say you get to 50 and you're getting 10 to convert. That's good, but it could be better. To your point, like what are you doing in those 10 that actually worked? Was it random? Was it just that they're goodness of their heart? Probably not. You probably did something that was actually like helpful for them. And what happened to the other 40? Like, did they just like, were not interested? Were they not helpful? Like, why did they get on the phone to begin with? Anyways, so ask critical questions about yourself. Don't just let yourself like off the hook and just be like, oh, it was a bad call. Okay, maybe, but is that really what happened? Like, what actually happened? Where did you lose them? What happened? Like, things like that, I think would really help you, I think, continue to improve your conversion rate if you think about it. And some of these are just not meant to be, you've sent 1,000 emails, 50 responses, 5 to 10% is about par for course in this industry. But of the 950 that didn't respond, like follow up. I guarantee you another 100 will respond back. You know what I mean? So I think just things like that you could do. But then like be a little like cognizant. Yes, it's great to have 1,000 meetings or 500 meetings, and I know people that do. But in some sense, maybe are you being focused enough? Like, what, to your point, like, are you just emailing? Maybe this is fine. I think what you should do is target a first job. Like, let's say you're kind of emailing all these big banks, great, but chances are you're not going to get your first job at a big bank. I mean, maybe, but it's sort of like, it's harder, right? So maybe you start with like the more middle market, regional type folks if banking is of interest, and then email, and then do that same force behind that and say, hey, I want to work for you guys, part-time, whatever it takes, I'm willing to do that. This is what I bring to the table, boom. And then I think then transition that up to something else. So some of this is near-term relationships, some of these are medium-term, some of these are longer-term. So just like sort of organize yourself maybe around that and what's working. And I think that should help you out in the medium term.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. Just because I don't have a sophomore year internship lined up. So I've been reaching out to a lot of the smaller big shops and everything.
I totally am with that. It's totally fine. And it's not the end of the world. It's sort of, in fact, it's the people, and trust me, a lot of my students got their, across the Elevate platform, like got their sophomore or junior internships, their sophomore year, like spring is, and a lot of them did. And so for me, it's sort of actually not a great thing. Yes, they have an internship, but I actually think you could have been using that whole year to continue to network and build relationships. If you just kind of sit around and do nothing, great, that's fine. But maybe you're not taking advantage of that enough. So it's okay. I mean, I think just sort of take this as a challenge. If you get to March or April, don't have something, then continually assess where you are, right? I think that's the other thing. You don't want to be surprised when you get to April, like, oh my God, nothing happened. Why hasn't it happened, right? But also have a plan B, plan C. Like, it's your sophomore year. It's really not the end of the world if you work at something that's not your number one top choice, because it's never the where you are. It's sort of the destination. It's sort of about the journey as well. So just kind of maybe think of those things in that way. Hopefully that gives you better perspective.
Thank you so much, Coach.
You got it. Okay, what else, guys? As far as questions, if not, we can go right back to the presentation.
I'll jump in there for a minute. I think Cash brought up a lot of really good points there, and Faris, thank you for the question. If I had to pick like one point that I would really harp on among all the good points you brought up, was really on the follow-up. I think a lot of people can do a good job, reach out to the right people, set themselves up, know what to say on the phone, but really following up, consistency, but more importantly, having a reason to follow up, not just being like, hey, here's my clock, now I got to do another one, but really having a reason. And it can just be an update as simple as, hey, I'm taking a credit class next semester. I'm really interested in restructuring. Do you have time to chat? You're changing classes every semester, somewhere along the lines of, hey, I had this interview coming up for a credit-related opportunity. Can you speak on the phone with me? I really appreciate your time. I think really having a purpose behind that is really important, but also having like that cognizant point where hindsight is always 20/20. But I think it's always easy to go in that tunnel vision. I'm doing this for sophomore year. I'm doing this for junior year. But in reality, even now as a senior, some of the people I talked to freshman year, it might have just been 1 or 2 coffees, never saw them again. But now something comes around, whether it be putting together a LIBOR event or another opportunity when you're looking around. A lot of these opportunities really do come from people you've known for 2, 3, 4 years. And I think someone with cash experience over maybe a decade or something like that. So I think the follow-up, not just within a recruiting cycle, but also long term, I think is one of the best points he brought up there. So that was my 2 cents there, and thank you for the question, Ferris. And I think a follow-up question I would ask, you brought up an interesting point where, again, we're in an interesting period in time right now, 2020, where I think the last year's cohort, they did what you said, the juniors would go their sophomore spring. I was curious to hear, based on, if you have a pulse on the current network, do you expect that acceleration of both undergraduate and on cycle private equity? So for the current undergraduates, the sophomores and juniors, and then on cycle for private equity, do you historically over the past 5-10 years, it's been accelerating every month. Do you have a pulse on what that kind of looks like now that the people in this room now are kind of your first full cycle in the COVID environment? Or, if not, what advice you would give them now that they have this virtual environment now only?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll preface this by saying I am on the Elevate side working with a handful of banks and private equity firms for different opportunities. So, I'll share with you what I can share, and then, from that sense. But I think, look, I think as far as the banking is concerned, probably still for the sort of large banks looking at late spring, mid to late spring, unless things are drastically different in terms of like business activity, headcount, et cetera, that can push back. I think that's probably still can be expected right around then. So what's important for that timeline, right, guys? It's important to have just kind of, for us's point, some internship, right? Like that you can talk to, and that you're saying you're going to work on your summer. So I think on the banking side, what my suggestions have been, just from seeing multiple levels of kind of years of doing this, one is going to have to just be like comfort in sort of continuing to build those relationships virtually, like we highlighted and Eric highlighted as well. When you go to that room, right, a lot of times, and specifically for like schools like who are not the target schools, like maybe where I went, and Rutgers to some banks as well as not a target. I think for you guys, it's just having people in the room that see your resume or can forward your resume on, or your information, that say, hey, this is a capable candidate that I know and I can vouch for, right? And it's oftentimes like it's usually like first years, right? It's the Amols and it's those guys who obviously I've gotten to know really well from the Elevate side, but I think those are the people that are really instrumental in these processes, especially for the non-target schools. So I would say, like, really make a good impression on your seniors, as well as people that you work alongside with, as well as people who are kind of first, second years in some of these places. I think those are the first line of defense in a lot of cases. Second thing is meet people like Rutgers alums. Like, if you have a really good conversation with VPs, MDs, they will push you along the process, right? And if they like you, or if you think they're a good job. So I think that's again really important. From a timing perspective, I mean, what we've seen is sort of an acceleration of trend towards this, but kind of all interviews being done at a virtual level, right? I think you kind of see first round, second rounds all being virtual. So getting comfort around that, comfort around your story, sort of why these careers, why you're interested in any of these sort of initiatives and things like that. And then really talking about your prior experience and whatever you've done or whatever you're taking, whatever, and that how that leads to banking or investing or whatever as a career. So bottom line, I still expect the timeline probably to be sort of spring of next year for people looking for junior internships. I think there's ongoing needs for full-times as they come up. So sort of that. And then I think on the private equity side, yeah, look, this fall, usually it's been for first year PE, it's not as relevant for this crowd. It's been very early, but it's sort of probably a little bit later this year. But we don't have to touch on that because that's not as relevant for this group here. So is that helpful, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Couple of you guys. Okay, yeah, sorry. There was a couple private messages. Let me just make sure and I had it. Oh yeah, someone asked about the social media stuff. Here it is for those people. We put all of our professional conversations, a lot of lives and all the sessions from all my other schools, all the highlights there. So a lot of you guys already are on it, but if you want, you could follow it there. Like I mentioned, happy to connect on LinkedIn and take any questions I didn't answer here offline and try to get you guys, if you don't want to ask in sort of a larger group. Okay, let's keep going. What other questions do people have? If not, I will share a few more thoughts on some of these things at a high level. I'm not going to go over overview of investment bank. I think unless people tell me they want me to, I think I kind of think about it: corporate finance, sales and trading, research, asset management. Again, I'm not going to go over that to a great extent here. I think one thing that's interesting when you think about corporate finance is sort of a lot of people talk about like different industries and different product groups. as how I think about it, sort of, vertically and horizontally, sort of think about industry groups, M&A, capital markets, lev fin, restructuring. Again, if people have questions, I'm happy to go into this and do a deep dive. But like, M&A is basically corporate advisory where you're doing transactions and you're kind of buying and selling companies on behalf of your clients, or you're helping your companies your clients buy and sell companies. Capital markets is when you want to take companies public, go IPOs, debt capital markets, etc. Leverage finance is when you help large transactions arrange financing for them. And then restructuring is when sort of credit issues, especially in today's market, working through some of those things. So those are all the product groups. And then on the industry side, a lot of banks are arranged by industry groups. Goldman, for instance, was arranged by industry groups, where you have different industry groups that are interested to you. That's another area where if there's certain industry groups that you guys are interested in, start tackling them. Be like, hey, start becoming sort of knowledgeable in that space. And I think that will really help you in terms of your careers and recruiting as well. Let me pause there and see if people have any other.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, Jason, go for it.
So first of all, thank you for coming out and giving us some of your time. So I'm currently a freshman at RBS, and evaluating all the different routes in finance I can take, I would definitely say I'm more interested in the private equity side. But from the advice that I've been given, I've been recommended not to pursue private equity solely if I'm interested in being at one of the larger funds. I've been advised to really put most of my eggs in the investment banking basket, although that's not something that I'm against. I do think investment banking is interesting. I'm just more interested in private equity. But I was wondering about your thoughts about whether I should split my time in terms of networking and how I really build my application between those two strategies, or do you think that I should focus on one solely, as well as I haven't really been able to get a lot of clear information about what private equity firms look for in their recruiting. So I know like investment banks look for a sophomore and junior year internship, but I'm kind of looking for more information about private equity.
Yeah, look, yeah, okay, fair enough. So it's a good question. You're a freshman, you said, so you're pretty kind of early on, right? Yeah, I'll give you sort of my answer here, and then I'll direct you to a few different sources. From at least the Elevate side. Look, I think we're probably the best platform to give you that advice, since we featured, we have professionals from all these industries. So I'll direct you to a few different places. I think, look, the first thing is you're early, right? I think like I would just sort of advise you to not pay as much attention to kind of what other people are saying about going from X to Y, or, what is the optimal path to certain things, right? I think, look, at the end of the day, these careers are very competitive. Ask your, upperclassmen, regardless of what year they're in and sort of, what industry they're looking at, these are very competitive. So I think while I want all of you guys to be very, very ambitious, I want you guys also to sort of, take like one foot in front of the other, right? So like, it's going to be, it's almost like a very few amount of people, I think, go in and get sort of a private equity role or whatever right out of undergrad, or your senior year, your junior year of college or something like that. So I think tackle that with some level of with strength, but also I think first you're at RBC. What type of role are you doing at RBC? Is it RBS or RBC?
RBS.
RBS. What role?
Oh no, I'm in the Rutgers Business School. I'm not.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry. I thought it was an internship. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. So I got you. So first step would be to like get an internship, you know what I mean? Anywhere, and sort of build that, kind of resume in that sense. Number two would be to really get it. What I think I'm hearing from you, which is totally fair as a freshman. In fact, I even expect that from like my juniors, is like not as much of a deep understanding of these different careers, which is again, totally expected. So the next step would be to like build that understanding of these careers, what they are, et cetera. And then thirdly, I mentioned this answer to I think one of the guys earlier is, develop more of a sense around why you think you'd be good at those things. Again, so traditionally, yes, the answer is if you want to go into private equity, we've seen people go into banking because the skill set that we're looking for in private equity is a combination of that M&A, transaction, financial modeling, et cetera, those skill sets. These careers are exceedingly competitive, right? I think so that's the one thing to think about. So just sort of think about it in that context. But yes, traditionally, but also understand for yourself, like, why do you want to do, so you mentioned like, you don't know if you want to go to banking, you really want to do private equity. If I asked you why, would you be able to give me an answer that's like, why do you want to do private equity?
Yeah. So basically, in my junior year, one of my friends had started a digital marketing agency with another friend of his that didn't work out. So he started another one, and I joined him. So through that whole experience, through junior and senior year of scaling that business, being in sales calls with clients, assessing how their businesses work and how we could scale them, we worked with primarily gyms and e-commerce stores. So I knew I wanted to be in finance and investing, but when I had that experience of working with businesses and talking about how what their strategies were, how they were reaching their goals, I knew I wanted to be in something that had finance, but also had an operational side of things. So like looking on like large firms' websites, I've been able to see that they do a lot of restructuring, and there is a degree of operational
Okay,
aspects.
okay, that's a decent answer. So I think that's fine. I think so. I would also include in that answer sort of, or understanding sort of, then investing. Operating is just one component of PE. Like investing is the big component of PE. Like you're being like brought in to be a good investor. So I think as much as you can sort of build that investing skill set, that would be another big thing in PE. I did not hear that in your answer, but I think you got most of the other stuff. But look, I think so first big step, I could give you like a 30-minute answer, and we're going to be doing that on Saturday because I'm going to talk to Center from Centerbridge, who is in private equity. But I think before we do all that, I think let me point you to two different areas within Elevate. So these are sort of the conversations that I've had with people, in this industry. And if you kind of see the folks that we've had on within private equity, we've spoken to Blackstone, Apollo, Carlyle, KKR, Warburg, so on and so forth. So I think I check that out. I think each of those are going to be like super, and those are all like, some of them are partner level people, but some of them are also principal, associate level people. So you'll get a sense of like, people who've had that career path. Again, be very ambitious, also be very aware of sort of where your strengths and weaknesses are. And then if you want even more than that, obviously, I talked about this, but we have sort of the private equity sort of more like a masterclass type of thing, which is taught by professionals. So if you want to go even more deeper than what's, free resources available, you can obviously take these up. These are, again, we try to make them as accessible as possible, but those are sort of trainings, boot camp type on these careers. So we have in banking, PE, and VC. So if you guys are interested, obviously check it out. But my point is, wherever you want to go, however deep you want to go, you can sort of access these two resources. And then lastly, like I mentioned, this weekend, we're talking to people like, last weekend I had someone from private equity. So if you want to sort of track all those things, you could just get it on the website. So there's a lot of resources. Most of them are free. So just go, and I would just dive in, really learn from people who are in the industry. Don't learn from people who think they know what they're doing. Your classmates, your classmates are great, but guess what? They haven't worked in private equity either. So I think, just sort of learn from people who are in this space. And that's the best thing I can give you, because there's so much noise, there's so much competition, there's so much unnecessary stuff. You got to be on your kind of journey, and I think you will be successful. I can already kind of see it. All you guys, but especially the ones who are asking questions. So, and also take advantage, guys. Like, I'm not saying this meeting, but anytime you get opportunities to ask professionals, like, I want you guys to like really ask questions and because what you can do afterwards is, you can email. Like the last session, I had 8 or so people at my, like the week I'm on, that everyone email, a bunch of people email me after. It's like, hey, this is a great session. And so there's a better chance that people will like remember you, whatever, right after the fact. So I'm just saying, take advantage of the opportunities that you have in a remote environment, because you may get a lot less of these like corporate conversations or professional events and stuff like that. Just some free advice. All right, I think we have a few more minutes. Eric, I don't know if you want to. There were a bunch of slides I had, but I think I'm happy to sort of take one more question from the audience if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that plan sounds good. Being respectful of everybody's time here, I think we can do one more question or two if it's really quick.
I will plug it. If you guys are Shark Tank fans, you should also. I talked to Mark Cuban on my platform, so you guys can totally check that out if you're interested. It's not necessarily private equity, but he talks about VC. I asked him about that, so if that's interesting, you should check that out. Anyway, so okay, let's keep going. What are the questions that people have?
I had a question.
Yeah, Nathan. Sorry, I understood. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. There's a lot of noise being like spoken about the value of MBAs now, and how there's the top schools that are available, and you went to Chicago Booth, which is obviously top 10 and all that. What's your opinion on the value of MBAs in the future and top ranking schools when getting it?
Yeah, and so someone just Mehul asked about the Cuban thing, so I just sent you the link. It's on YouTube, but you can. Those are all like a bunch of the conversations that we have. So you can. I just sent you the link. Yeah, look, I think the MBA is a good question. I think it really only makes sense. First of all, kind of suspend that a little bit to a couple years out of your college, because your career could go in like all of the. There's one thing of your own career, right? You might go somewhere and then you might love it and then stay there for a long time, right? And you may not need an MBA. You may go somewhere and then transition to something else or become an entrepreneur, and you may not need that. Or you may go somewhere and then you had no intention of getting an MBA, but you needed to go do something else. So I think there's so much learning and exploration that happens in your first couple years of college. I mean, after college, that like, it's, guys, your career is 40 years long at least, right? So it's sort of like we put so much pressure on ourselves when you get it right in 21, 22. I've had on people on the platform, like I had on this guy from Warburg who sort of got rejected from every bank on the street, and now he's a partner at Warburg. My point is like you could go. So it's always all about. It's never about the destination. It's sort of like what you use a platform to get ahead at. So in other words, like Rutgers for some of you guys was like, oh, like a great destination to get to. But as you know now, it's just what you use a platform to go to the next thing in life, right? I tell that to my students who go to HBS, the same thing. Great, you're HBS, who cares? Now, what are you going to do with that, right? So I think it's sort of like that. It's never enough to say I went to this school or whatever. So my question to you is, what are you going to use that MBA for? I think that's what I tell my MBAs. Like I'm doing a bunch of these workshops at all my top 10 MBAs this fall. I did a bunch in the spring, and I always tell them, like I'm speaking at Wharton, I think next week, and I'm gonna we're gonna tell those guys like, what are you gonna do with this MBA? You guys have spent $200,000 to get a great MBA. So like, what are we gonna do with it, right? So I think it's sort of like, what are you gonna do with all these opportunities that you have? So I'd say like have a clear plan of what you want to get out of it, right? Either you're going to advance your career, either you're going to sort of, you need it to you get there. Either you want to take a 2-year break and, BCG is paying for it. Great. So sort of what is the, what are you going to, or you're going to start a company and you need that network to sort of connect with all these people. So, what are you going to use that for? Really understand that. So then my second part of that answer is, in my experience, it's been useful for probably 3 groups of people. One who needed to sort of get ahead. So whether you're sort of in banking or consulting or PE, you sometimes needed to get to that principal, senior associate, manager, whatever, vice president level. So that's one thing, or whatever level it is. Number 2, people want to completely make career switches. So a lot of people I've noticed coming from, especially from non-target schools, they use the MBA sort of as a way to continue to ladder up in their career, right? So I think go from that's sort of what I did. I was like, hey, I'm not really, consulting's great. I was at Deloitte, great firm, but I kind of wanted to take this, I wanted to level up my career. So I went and got my MBA. I was very lucky. I was one of the youngest people at Chicago. I think I was like 22 when I applied and got in. So I think it was just very early in my 22, 23. So very early, but again, maybe it makes sense to wait a few years for you guys. So whatever it means, it's an individual decision. But I went in, I was like pretty sure I wanted a career change, and so it worked for me. So that's the second group of people. And the third group of people that want to build something entrepreneurially or want to build something on their own. And then that's a great forum to do that, where you get to meet a lot of people and also round out your skill set of all these other skills, right? So that's been my experience with the MBA. Over time, I think it probably diminishes outside of the top, 10, 15, just because there's so many other ways to learn now. That said, it's an amazing network. It's an amazing sort of credentialization. It also opens a lot of doors. So for you, it's an individual decision. It's a huge investment of not just money, but also time, 2 years of like cost of going in there. But if I felt like it was needed, in retrospect, it was really helpful for me. But it's a personal question, but I would defer on that a little bit until you could start your journey. Is probably maybe take a GMAT, but that's about it.
Thank you so much.
Awesome, guys. Well,
thanks for the great question, Nathan. Really
Yeah.
appreciate everybody's time today. Totally understand that it's definitely midterm season at Rutgers. I feel it myself too, even though
yeah, I'm sorry we did it in the midterm side. So maybe next time, sorry about I think it was my calendar, since I was totally.
No worries at all. I mean, no matter where you go, someone always has an exam, so it's impossible to find a day. But I think what's more important is that, I really appreciate the questions all the students asked. I thought they were very informative and really, especially trying to make the most environment. And then, on behalf of LIBOR, as well as on behalf of Rutgers Business School, we would like sincerely thank you for the time you took today, Kaushik, to really answer questions, hear the students, especially, in time.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you for having me. Really, really happy to connect, further with this with Elevate. We're working on stuff on the recruiting networking side. That's, I think, Ritvik, some of you guys are part of. So just keep updated. I think what we have, this is effectively the largest career platform now for sort of these business and et cetera careers. And we really emphasize, you know, building relationships and helping you guys succeed across the career and bringing you guys access to all these professionals. Like nowhere else will you find this level of professionals. So really take advantage of this stuff. And I would say, I would say just like, you know, and then sort of get on the list, whatever, you know, track us on Instagram, wherever you want to get the information. Just think ahead to where you want to be. And also in the COVID, right? I think one other thing I'll be remiss to say, it's a tough time for everyone, guys. Like, so, you know, try to do the things and control the things you can, build your skill set on your own, sort of build relationships, all this stuff, but understand that, you know, it is going to be a tough year ahead for everyone. So hopefully, I mean, thankfully you guys are in school and not working yet. So it's sort of another kind of double-edged sword. But again, just think of everything sort of as half full and be optimistic about things. Don't hesitate to reach out. You know, if you want to ask any questions on LinkedIn and stuff, I'm happy to kind of connect there. But other than that, good luck, guys. Best of luck with your career journeys, and hopefully, you know, we'll see you on the Elevate stuff going forward.
I just had one more quick question.
Yeah.
What's the best way to stay connected with Elevate and like
Okay.
Instagram, newsletter?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the newsletter, which now goes to like 5,000 or 6,000 students across all my schools, that's a great way to stay connected. I think Instagram's the other one. I have a social media person who just puts all our stuff, all our events up there. I think those are probably the two best ways. People reach out to LinkedIn because they want to kind of, you know, grow their networks. That's fine too. I'd probably say those are the three things. And then check out the website. There's just so much info on there. I think we have a better job of organizing it. So if you guys, anyone of you are like particularly skilled in any of these things, let me know and I'm happy to get help. But I think, you know, there's just so much info there from people and everything. And if you want to deep dive more, check out the trainings. I mean, I've had like, I think hundreds, close to 1,000 people take these trainings and actually like be very successful. Again, you don't have to take them if you don't want. But my point is, nowhere else will you actually get trainings that are presented by professionals from like 10, 20, 30 different firms on these careers. So again, just do what you want. But just definitely take a look at the resources. I think you'll be really you'll benefit a lot. So with that said, I gotta hop. Thank you so much, guys. It's been so nice to be back at Rutgers. Hopefully Eric and Rithvik will do more things going forward. Okay.
Thanks, Kaushik. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.